Picture this. You're walking through a shopping mall parking lot on a Tuesday afternoon. Nothing special about the day. You've got one thing on your mind: get in, get out. But then something happens that you didn't plan for. Your eyes land on a car. Not because it's beautiful. Because it's wrecked. The rear bumper is held on by what appears to be prayer and electrical tape. There's a dent the size of a football on the driver's door. The paint, what's left of it, has faded from whatever color it used to be into something closer to regret. 3 seconds. That's all it took. And in those 3 seconds, without a single piece of evidence, without a single conversation, your brain has already written a story about the person who owns that car. Maybe you thought, careless. Maybe, struggling. Maybe you felt a flicker of something you wouldn't admit to at a dinner party, a quiet, private relief that your car is not that car. Now shift your eyes 12 feet to the left. There it sits. A luxury SUV, polished to a mirror finish, the kind of clean that suggests it has never actually encountered weather. The chrome catches the sun just right. The badge alone costs more than some people's monthly rent. Same 3 seconds. Completely different story. Capable. Successful. Someone who has their life together. Here's the thing that should bother you: you didn't decide to do any of that. You didn't sit down and think, let me evaluate these automobiles and draw some conclusions. Your brain did it automatically, before you had a chance to intervene. Before you even realized you were doing it. What you just experienced has a name. I call it the identity scan. And every single person watching this right now performs it multiple times a day, in parking lots, at traffic lights, in driveways, in office car parks. Because here's what we're actually doing when we look at someone's car: we're not looking at a vehicle. We're looking for a signal. We're looking for proof of who this person is, what they've achieved, what they've survived, and whether or not they deserve our respect. Cars don't just carry people. They carry invisible broadcasts. They transmit stories about achievement, neglect, ambition, and sometimes rebellion, before the driver has spoken a single word. That beat-up sedan. It's broadcasting something. Maybe it says, I've been through hard times. Maybe it says, I don't care what you think. Maybe, and this is the one nobody talks about, it says, I'm saving every penny I have for something that actually matters to me. And the luxury SUV? It's broadcasting too. Maybe it says, I made it. Maybe it says, please see me. Maybe it says, I am terrified of being overlooked, and this chrome finish is the most expensive way I know how to fight that fear. You don't know. You can't know. But the broadcast is happening anyway. Have you ever, and be honest, parked your car at the back of a lot because it was dirty? Or dented? Or just, older than everything around it? That quiet walk of shame across a parking lot, hoping no one looks too closely. That feeling is not about cars. That feeling is about identity. About the terror that your circumstances might be mistaken for your character. And that right there, that small, real, human moment, is exactly what today is about. Before we dive deeper into the psychology of all this, I want to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching from right now? And more importantly, what was the very first car you ever owned? Does it still hold a piece of your identity, or are you glad it's gone? Drop it in the comments. I'm reading every single one. Let me tell you about a peacock. A peacock's tail is, from a purely survival standpoint, a terrible idea. It's heavy. It makes you slower. It makes you more visible to predators. If you were designing an animal from scratch and your goal was, don't get eaten, you would never design a peacock's tail. And yet, there it is. 5 feet of iridescent, impractical, magnificent plumage. Dragging along the ground. Announcing the peacock's location to every predator within 100 meters. Why does it exist? Because it works on peahens. Because a female peacock looks at that ridiculous tail and sees not a liability, but a signal. A message that says, I am so genetically strong, so healthy, so well-resourced, that I can afford to carry this completely useless thing, and still survive. If I can do that, imagine what my offspring could do. The tail is not a tail. The tail is a resume. This is signaling theory. And your car? Your car is your tail. The human brain, the part that evolved over hundreds of thousands of years on savannas and in forests, the part that had to decide in a split second whether that shape in the tall grass was a predator or just a tree, that brain is still running. Right now. Inside every one of us. And it is deeply, biologically wired to scan for signals of resource and reliability. Today, we don't live in that world anymore. But the machinery hasn't changed. It's just been redirected. Now, instead of scanning for physical health, we scan for financial health. Instead of looking for signs of strength, we look for signs of status. And the car, a machine that most of us spend thousands of hours of our lives inside, has become one of the most powerful status signals in modern society. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. A study you'd recognize from everyday life, a clean car doesn't just signal wealth. It signals attention to detail. It signals conscientiousness, the psychological trait linked to reliability, follow-through, and competence. Your brain sees a spotless vehicle and thinks, this person is on top of things. And a messy car? The interior that looks like a combination of a fast food graveyard and a small filing office? Your brain reads that as internal chaos. Disorganization. Maybe unreliability. Now here's the thing I need you to sit with, none of this is necessarily true. The cleanest car might belong to someone who is meticulous about their vehicle and a complete disaster in every other area of their life. The mess might belong to a surgeon who saves lives. The signals are not facts. They're just signals. But the scan happens anyway. Because it's not a choice. It's evolution doing what evolution does, looking for shortcuts to judgment, because in the world our brains were built for, slow judgment got you killed. We are, all of us, running evolutionary machinery in a modern parking lot. If you've ever found yourself making a snap judgment about someone based on their car, don't worry. That's not a character flaw. That's just your ancient biology doing its job in a world it wasn't quite designed for. If you're finding this deep dive into the human brain interesting so far, hit subscribe. Every week, we unmask the hidden behaviors we all share but rarely talk about. Now I want to talk about the person doing the judging. Because here's what the research actually tells us, and this is the part nobody wants to hear at a dinner party, the person most consumed by what other people drive, the person who feels the strongest status staying at a red light, the person whose jaw tightens when someone pulls up next to them in something newer, shinier, more expensive. That person is almost never judging the other driver. They are judging themselves. Alain de Botton wrote a book called Status Anxiety. And the core of it is this, the anxiety is not really about status. It's about the terror of being invisible. Of not matching. Of living in a world that has very specific ideas about what success looks like, and fearing, deeply and privately, that you don't measure up. The car isn't the problem. The fear of being seen as nothing is the problem. Think about the last time you felt that sting. You're sitting at a red light, life is fine, the day is ordinary. And then it pulls up next to you. Something sleek, something powerful, something that costs more than you'd care to calculate. And something shifts. A feeling you didn't invite, that you didn't choose, that crept in through the glass. Maybe it was envy. Maybe it was a kind of shame. Maybe it was just a quiet, uncomfortable awareness of the distance between where you are and where some part of you thinks you should be. That feeling. That status anxiety. And it's everywhere. But here's the twist that should change how you see the parking lot. High-status cars are not always a signal of high confidence. Very often, more often than we admit, they are the opposite. They are armor. The person who must drive the most expensive car in every room, who needs you to notice, needs you to be impressed, that person is often not moving from a place of security. They're moving from a place of fear. The fear that without the armor, without the chrome and the badge and the power, they might be ordinary. And ordinary, in a world that worships the extraordinary, feels terrifyingly close to invisible. This is not judgment. I'm not saying wealthy people with expensive cars are secretly broken. I'm saying that status anxiety is not a poor person's problem or a rich person's problem. It is a human problem. It lives in all of us, at different volumes, at different times. The question is, what volume is yours running at? And what is it costing you? Be honest with me, have you ever felt that status sting? Maybe you pulled up to a red light next to a car that cost more than your annual salary and felt something. Tell me about a time you felt judged by what you drove, or a time you caught yourself judging someone else. Let's get real in the comments. Let me ask you something that might sound strange. Have you ever felt personally insulted when someone said something critical about your car? Not mildly annoyed. Not mildly defensive. Actually, genuinely, personally offended, like the comment wasn't about a machine, but about you? Neuroscience has shown us that when people become attached to an object, really attached, the way a driver might feel about a car they've owned for years, the brain begins to incorporate that object into its body image. Into its spatial map of where me ends and not me begins. In other words, the car stops being an object you own. It becomes an extension of your body. Your chassis. Your shell. This is why experienced drivers don't consciously calculate whether their wing mirrors will clear a gap, they feel it, the way you feel the edges of your own elbows. The car becomes a sensory extension of the self. And when something becomes part of your sense of self, an attack on it is an attack on you. The automotive industry has understood this for decades. Have you ever noticed what car advertisements actually sell? It's almost never the car. It's almost never the engine, or the fuel efficiency. It's a feeling. A moment. It's the shot of the car cresting a mountain road as the sun breaks through clouds, and the driver looks like someone who has arrived, not at a destination, but at a version of themselves they've always wanted to be. Car ads don't sell horsepower. They sell transformation. They sell the moment of arrival. And the reason that works is because our cars genuinely do become part of how we see ourselves. The industry isn't selling us something we don't feel. It's monetizing something we already feel, deeply and instinctively. Your first car. It wasn't just transportation. It was your first taste of freedom. The first time the world opened up beyond the radius of whatever adults would drive you. It was a rite of passage. And whatever was happening in your life at that exact moment fused itself to that car, the way emotions fuse to songs. The car became a container for a whole chapter of who you were. That's not materialism. That's not shallow. That's human memory. That's identity. Does your car feel like just a tool to you, or is it a part of who you are? If you're a genuine car person, someone who has named their vehicle, feels actual grief when they have to sell it, or talks to it when it won't start, leave a automobile emoji in the comments. Let's see just how many of us have fused with our machines. Alright. We've been circling the real answer long enough. It's time. People who love driving, genuinely love it, not just tolerate it as a commuting necessity, but feel something shift inside them when they get behind the wheel, they all share a trait. And it has almost nothing to do with cars. It's called an internal locus of control. The psychologist Julian Rotter coined the concept in the 1950s, and it's simple but profound. Some people fundamentally believe that what happens to them is largely the result of their own actions. Their effort, their choices, their will. That's an internal locus of control. Other people believe that what happens to them is mostly the result of external forces, luck, other people, systems, fate. That's external. Now think about what driving actually is. You press the accelerator, the car moves. You turn the wheel, the car turns. You decide to take the long way home through the winding road, and you take it, exactly as slowly or as quickly as you want. In a world where you cannot control your economy, cannot control your employer's moods, cannot control whether your family understands you, cannot control the news cycle or the weather or the rate of interest on your mortgage, the steering wheel is the one place in modern life where input reliably, consistently, beautifully equals output. For people who carry an internal locus of control, who are wired to seek agency, who feel most alive when they are the cause of something rather than the effect, the car is not transportation. It is sanctuary. It is the one room in a chaotic house where the rules make sense. Where your choices matter, immediately and completely. And there's another layer to this. Ask a true driver about their best drives, and they will describe a flow state without using the word. They'll tell you about a coastal road at dawn, no traffic, no destination pressure, just the rhythm of the wheel and the road, and the extraordinary, uncommon peace of a mind that has stopped arguing with itself for a few minutes. These people don't love the destination. They love the drive. Because the drive is the only place they feel completely, uncomplicatedly in charge of their own story. This trait, the deep, hardwired need for agency, is what separates the drivers from the passengers. Not just in cars, but in life. If this is hitting home for you, share this video with that one friend who always insists on being the one to drive. They need to understand why. And honestly, so do you. There is a cost to all of this that we haven't talked about yet. And it's a real one. When we allow cars to become character proxies, when we let the vehicle stand in for the person, we start making decisions about human beings that have nothing to do with who they actually are. It happens in dating. Studies show that the same person, photographed next to different cars, is rated differently. Not slightly differently. Significantly differently. The car changes how attractive, how intelligent, how trustworthy the person appears, without the person changing at all. It happens in hiring. Research shows that managers unconsciously factor in perceived socioeconomic signals, including the car a candidate drives to an interview, when making judgments about professionalism and potential. It happens in social respect, in neighborhoods, at school pickups, at places of worship. The car in the car park becomes a shorthand for whether this person belongs. And what gets lost in all of this? Everything that actually matters. Integrity doesn't have a chrome finish. Empathy doesn't come with a sunroof. Courage, creativity, loyalty, the capacity to love deeply, none of those things are visible from a parking lot. The person driving the dented sedan might be a teacher who has spent 20 years changing the direction of young lives. The person driving the luxury car might be profoundly alone, using the vehicle's status to fill a silence inside them that money can't quite reach. The question that shifts everything, the question I want to leave you sitting with, is not, what do they drive? The question is, why do I care? What does my reaction to someone else's car tell me about me? About what I fear? About what I value? That question, asked honestly, will tell you more about yourself than anything you see in a parking lot. We've covered a lot of ground today. If you've made it this far, you're officially part of the Deep Thinkers Club here. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, we pull back the curtain on the hidden behaviors we all carry. Next week's breakdown might be the one that changes how you see everything. Let's go back to the parking lot. There's the old sedan. The one with the dented door and the faded paint and the bumper held on by something close to stubbornness. And in it, sitting quietly before pulling away, is a person. And across the lot, the luxury SUV gleams in the afternoon sun. And somewhere nearby, there is someone walking between these two cars, doing the identity scan, feeling the snap of judgment before they even realize it's happening. What I want you to notice is this: the person in the old car is not waiting for the stranger's verdict. They have somewhere to be. They have a life inside them, hopes and losses and a favorite song and a person they love, that the parking lot will never be able to see. The judgment of the stranger does not reach them. Because they have something the stranger might not have, they are not using other people's circumstances to measure their own worth. Here is what today has been building toward. The car reveals circumstance. The judgment reveals the judge. The vehicle you drive is a product of where you are right now, your finances, your history, your choices, the luck and the hardship that have shaped the chapter you're currently living. It is not your character. It is not your ceiling. It is not your verdict. And the way you feel when you look at someone else's car? That is a map. A map of your relationship with status, with visibility, with the fear of being ordinary, with the need for control. A map of the thing you're actually looking for when you look at a parking lot. What you're looking for is a place in the order of things. Some reassurance that you are seen, that you matter, that you are enough. And here is the truth that no car, in any price range, has ever successfully delivered. The reassurance you're looking for was never in the parking lot. It was always somewhere much harder to reach, and much more worth the journey. Next time you're at a red light, and there will be a next time, probably tomorrow, look to your left. Instead of running the identity scan, try something different. Try to imagine the story behind the person. Not the car. The person. What might they be carrying that you can't see? What chapter might they be in the middle of? You'll never know the answer. But the question itself, the act of asking it instead of judging, that is the shift. That is the thing that separates the person who uses the world as a mirror for their own anxiety, from the person who uses it as a window into someone else's humanity. That shift is available to you. At every red light. Every parking lot. Every morning commute. What's one thing you're going to change about how you see others after today? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. And I will see you in the next one.